In this presentation, we're going to talk about the 5 key historical thinking skills. Count them, 5, all right? We have chronological thinking, historical comprehension, historical analysis and interpretation, historical research, and historical issues. I do want to draw your attention to this website down here. It's from the National Center for History in the Schools at UCLA, and it is an excellent resource for both teachers and students to help them continue to advance their knowledge in historical thinking. So here we go. In front of you, you see a concept map outlining the key historical thinking skills. Step 1 is chronology. Step 2, comprehension. Step 3, analysis and interpretation. Step 4, research. And Step 5, issues. We will discuss all of these in due course as we move forward. The first historical thinking skill is chronology. So I'm going to zoom in on chronology right now. Here we go. And there you have chronology in red. Okay, and that's right here. And chronology basically means understanding the order of historical events and people. It's understanding what we call temporal order, and temporal means time. It's essential for anyone practicing history to understand the order of events. If you think, for example, that the Stamp Act occurred after the Revolutionary War, then you will not understand the significance of the Stamp Act and how it actually was a cause of the Revolutionary War. You have to have a sense of order, and that's why chronology is so important. Here we're going to talk about steps 2, comprehension, and step 3, analysis and interpretation, simultaneously because they both interrelate so much. But let's start with comprehension. Comprehension involves basic historical understanding, okay? You're going to identify central questions such as what were the causes of the Revolutionary War, or what were the effects of the Civil War. And then you're also going to make sure that you engage with primary and secondary sources. And you can't just read them. You have to use them and understand them. That's a very different thing than actually reading them, and that's where you get into analysis and interpretation. So let's take a closer look at that. Analysis and interpretation, you see we have the definition of analysis here. It's breaking something down into its component parts and understanding the relationship between those parts. So if you were to analyze the Revolutionary War, or rather the causes of the Revolutionary War, you would break down each of the causes individually. Say we're just look at 2, the Stamp Act and the French and Indian War. And you would have to understand the relationship between the French and Indian War and the Stamp Act and how both of those things connect to the Revolutionary War. You would do this through using primary and secondary sources and having the sources speak to you to show you what was actually going on during the time period. Once you do that, then you move into interpretation, and that's your opinion based on evidence and using critical thinking. So you would take your knowledge from the primary and secondary sources and from your textbook or whatever other secondary source your teachers or professors are having you read, and you would then put all that information together and develop an opinion about the event in question. And that's what analysis and interpretation and comprehension are all about. I hope that you see how both are interconnected. You really will have a serious problem doing one without the other. It's important that you have a good foundational understanding of what both of these things are as we move forward. Now we're going to talk about the historical thinking skills of research and issues. Okay, now these two things need to happen at the same time because there are two sides of the same coin. They work together. So when you're looking at research, you need to have a sense of what issues you'd like to explore, right? So you have to, research involves historical inquiry. So you need to develop a set of problems or a set of questions to investigate. You do this by starting with the past itself and identifying key issues and problems that presented themselves in history. You need to evaluate decision-making on the part of the people who made the decisions, the decision makers. So you need to look at how and why they made those decisions, what information was available to them at the time, to try to get a sense of how and why they came to whatever decision they came to. You're going to identify relevant historical antecedents. Now that's academic speak, so what does that mean? Well, that means you need to have a sense of cause and effect. Okay, cause and effect. You need to understand that certain things are caused by other things. You need to be able to identify that and determine which thing caused what next thing to happen. And once you have a sense of that, then you can start to develop your own set of problems or questions that you're going to investigate. And that is what historical research and issues are all about. So what did we learn? Well, we learned about the 5 key historical thinking skills, right? We learned that there are 5 that we need to be able to know and understand in order to actually do history. We learned that step 1 was chronology, step 2 was comprehension, step 3 was analysis and interpretation, step 4 is research, and step 5 is issues. And then we went and we discussed these each in deep detail. We discussed chronology, and we now understand that chronology is about the order of things. We know that we need to understand which things come first, which comes second, third, and so forth. Then we need to start to comprehend. We need to understand what occurred throughout history. And we use primary and secondary sources to help us do that. Then we can move into the analysis and interpretation phase where we break down things into their component parts and then we interpret. We form an opinion based on the evidence that's presented to us and our critical thinking about that evidence, okay? Then we can move into the research and issues where we start developing problems and questions that we want to investigate. So we have to start with identifying the key issues or problems of the past. We evaluate the decisions made by people of the past, and we identify relevant historical occurrences that happened before that issue or problem so that we can direct our historical inquiry and start to really understand how and why things occurred in the past. I hope that this presentation was useful for you, and I hope that now you have a better understanding of the 5 key historical thinking skills.